Gather round and listen well, for the history you've been fed is a lie wrapped in silk. Today, I want to tell you a story of why the Fey Prince carries a heart of jagged flint, and why our people have spent an eternity at each other's throats. You look at the Fey and see monsters of the mist, but you have forgotten the era of the Great Betrayal. Long ago we did not hide. We walked among you, sharing the breath of the world. But humans possess a unique hunger, a sickness of the soul that demands more than it can ever consume. We watched as you turned upon your own kind with a cruelty that shocked even the stars. You built tall, gray cities by choking the life from the soil, and when the land grew tired, you did not rest. You took from your neighbor. We saw you invent chains before you invented songs. We watched you hoard bread while your children shivered in the gutter, justifying your greed with laws written in blood. But your greatest sin was the discovery of cold iron. You realized that the very essence of our life, our magic, could be unraveled by the metal you pulled from the screaming earth. You didn't just want our land. You wanted our divinity. You hunted my kin not for food, but for the glamour in our veins, grinding our wings into dust to fuel your fleeting ambitions. You turned love into a bargaining chip and peace into a trap. The prince was not born a tyrant. He was a child of the sun who watched his mother, the Queen of Summer, walk into a human cathedral of stone to offer an olive branch, only to be bound in iron and displayed like a trophy. He learned that day that a human's word is a ghost, visible, but with no substance to hold on to. Now, as the prince stands upon the ridge of the world, his eyes are not filled with the joy of the coming dawn, but with the memory of the fires you lit. Listen closely, for the drums of the march are beginning, and the debts of your ancestors have finally come due.
If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of the Fae, don't let the story end here. To ensure you never miss a chapter of the myths and magic we uncover, click the subscribe button and join our court. Follow King of Heart, and let's explore the depths of the realms together.
The Age of Ash did not begin with a roar, but with the sickening scent of scorched heather and the rhythmic hammer of iron hitting anvils. As the prince watched from the high ridges of the Vale, the world he knew vanished beneath a shroud of soot. The humans had moved beyond simple greed. They had entered a fever of industry, a desperate race to dominate everything that breathed. They carved into the sacred mountains, pulling the cold bite from the earth's marrow, and forged a metal that felt like a scream to our ears. To them, the forests were not cathedrals of ancient wisdom, but mere timber for their insatiable furnaces. The prince's own mother, the Queen of Summer, believed the light of reason could outshine the darkness of human ambition. She went to them when the sky was the color of a bruised plum, carrying a crown of wildflowers as a gesture of enduring grace. She was invited to a banquet of glass and gold, a celebration of eternal friendship. But as the doors groaned shut, the air turned to poison. They didn't want her wisdom. They wanted her heart. They threw a shroud of cold iron over her radiance, the metal burning into her translucent skin like acid, and locked her in a cage of rusted bars. They mocked her immortality, desperate to find the secret of her light by breaking her apart. From the edge of the woods, the young prince saw the horizon ignite. He watched as the great groves were felled to build war machines, and he heard the cries of the dryads as their lifelines were severed. He saw human brothers betray one another for a handful of silver, proving that if they could treat their own flesh with such disdain, they would show no mercy to the Fae. The prince did not weep. The heat of the burning kingdom dried his tears before they could fall. Instead, he gathered the remnants of his shattered people and retreated into the mist. He walked away from the sun, his soul hardening into a mirror of the very iron that had enslaved his mother. The boy who loved the dawn died in those flames, and in his place rose a shadow that would haunt humanity for 1,000 years. The Age of Ash gave way to the Silent Century, a long, frozen era where the Fae existed only as a shivering ghost story whispered around human hearts. Behind the shimmering veil of mist, the prince did not age as mortals do. He calcified. He became a creature of moonlight and malice, ruling a kingdom of shadows where the vibrant greens of his childhood had been replaced by the jagged whites of a permanent winter. His heart, once a vessel for the song of the earth, was now a fortress of cold rage. He spent those 100 years perfecting the glamour, the cruel art of weaving light into lies. He learned to make a human see a feast where there was only rot, and a lover where there stood an executioner. Outside the veil, the humans forgot. They are a species of short memories and shorter lives. The atrocities of their ancestors became myths, then nursery rhymes, and finally silence. They continued to fracture, their kingdoms splintering like dry wood under the weight of their own arrogance. They waged wars over borders drawn in shifting sand, spilling oceans of blood for land they had forgotten how to cherish. They looked at the dark treelines and saw only wood to be harvested, never suspecting that a vengeful pair of eyes watched from the deep thicket. They believed they had won, that the Fae were extinct remnants of a superstitious past, even as their own world grew gray and hollow. The turning point came when the prince stood at the very precipice of the veil, his fingers brushing the invisible barrier between realms. Below him lay a human village, a cluster of flickering lights that looked like fallen stars in the mud. He watched a mother tuck her child into bed, and for a fleeting moment, the memory of his own mother's warmth flickered in his chest. But then he saw the iron poker by the fire and the rusted sickle leaning against the door, tools of the metal that had murdered his sky. The prince's face remained a mask of beautiful, terrifying stillness. He was not there to reclaim a friendship that never truly existed. He was there to collect the interest on 1,000 years of stolen light. The silence was over. The tithe was about to begin. The high walls finally crumbled, not from the force of a battering ram, but under the weight of an exhausted truth. After the blood had soaked deep enough into the soil to poison the wells of both worlds, the prince and the daughter of men stood upon the field of the first betrayal and chose to let the iron go cold. A fragile, shimmering peace began to knit the realms back together. You would think the story ends in a burst of golden light, and in many ways it did. We watched as Fae architects wove living willow into cathedrals for human orphans, and human scholars knelt in the dirt to learn the ancient language of the roots. The trade routes filled with the scent of enchanted spices and the sound of honest laughter. But peace is a heavy crown to wear when the jewels are cut from grief. As the years turned into a golden age of sharing, a shadow remained that no magic could dispel. We walked through the new libraries and realized the shelves were half empty. The thousands of years of art, music, and philosophy that should have been created during our war were simply gone. There are songs that will never be sung because the lineages that carried them were extinguished. There are flowers that will never bloom because their seeds were scorched in the age of ash. We looked at each other and saw not just neighbors, but the ghosts of who we might have been had we spent those centuries building instead of burning. The prince stands now in the center of a thriving city where Fae and human children play together in the sun. He is a king of a prosperous land, yet he carries the heaviest regret of all. He looks at the peace and finds it beautiful, but it is a beauty scarred by the knowledge of the could have been. We have learned to share the world, but we left behind a hollow space where a much greater world once lived. We are healed, yes, but we are shortened. For the true tragedy of our war was not that one side lost, but that both sides forgot how much they loved the light until they had spent a millennium in the dark. We have our peace, but we will forever haunt the ruins of our own potential.
So, they shared the bread, and they shared the land. The iron was melted into plows, and the wings of the Fae were never hunted again. It is a golden age, or so the songs say. But if you walk through the silent woods at dusk, you will see the prince standing alone. You see, the tragedy of war isn't just in the losing. It's in the winning and realizing how much you burn just to stand on the ashes. They have peace now, yes, but they will forever carry the one thing that magic cannot cure and time cannot erase. The knowledge of what they could have been if they had only learned to love before they learned to hate.